Hey, good morning, everybody. So congratulations for making it to the 9 a.m. session of the last day of Chi. Yeah, applause. The intro slide is done, so I'm Tom Feltwell, and this is what I'll be talking about. So what is second screening then? So second screening is the process of watching TV on a primary screen, and then also using a second screen, which could be a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. Just as in the example here, it doesn't normally take place on a plane, but it's for illustration purposes. So what you're doing on your second screen is often unrelated. So just as I've seen in many sessions at Chi, people second screening, looking at emails or whatever. But the context of this talk is where when you second screen, it's related to what's going on the TV. So, as I say, if you're looking at things like social media has created around TV viewing online back channels. So, as one researcher puts it, creating a digital sofa. So, you can be talking to people who are distributed around the country, around the world, and you can be talking about what's going on in the program. So, what you're basically doing there is you're co-viewing with other people. And the specific context of this talk is reality TV. So it's a hugely popular genre. Many of you will know it. And it's primarily made up of formats like competitions or contrived settings. So if you think of Big Brother or X Factor, Britain or America's Got Talent, that kind of thing. But there are other types of reality TV which document the goings-on of a set of interesting people. Such as the screenshot here from American Chopper, which is also a recent meme, so it's come back into the public domain. So in programs like this, the program makers they claim that they document what these people get up to, but often they pick on these social groups and these people because they're very different. That's part and parcel of what makes reality TV, this type of reality TV, so entertaining to people, is because it accentuates the difference or the otherness of these people. And that can be problematic. Tremlett points out that uncritical viewings of reality TV often accentuate the differences between the viewer and those on screen, leading to the entrenching of negative stereotypes. So when we think, and we got asked during the review process, well, why should we be critical? Why should you try to be critical of something that's for purely entertainment purposes? Well, the genre has acknowledged problems, as Tremlett is pointing out. And these programs, because they have such high viewership, that often provides justification for the program makers to continue making these programs. But it just further entrenches the othering that's occurring to these people. And quite impressively, Scarborough and McCoy did a study looking at the morality of TV viewers, and what they found was that the critical disposition of a lot of viewers and those who had quite a critical disposition towards TV didn't watch reality TV. So that means that the remaining people left watching reality TV are less critical. So we have a less critical audience watching a genre that has highly acknowledged problems. So we've done previous work in this area looking at things like reality TV and how we might design second screening experiences to encourage critical viewing. Well, critical viewing is this process which comes kind of from the media studies field, and it's the process of doing things like looking at the underlying production decisions. So who's being shown in particular shots, or what they focus on, or any patterns. Also the way that socio-political issues are framed and the way that they're talked about and represented in the programs, as well as in the critical viewing process bringing in the viewer's own beliefs and questioning, well, why do I find this entertaining? And in the context of HCI, we've in previous work, we found two really nice mechanisms when you're doing second screening to encourage reflection. So one of those is lean forward, which is where you're very closely engaged with what's going on the TV, and you might be trying to identify patterns or pay a lot of attention to what's going on. And the second mechanism is to lean back, where you might disengage temporarily from the primary screen and focus on your secondary screen to maybe reflect on some discussion or think about things. And more broadly, really, what we're interested in is creating and utilising the opportunity to produce a more balanced and nuanced and reflective discussion around these programs. So the way that we did that was by making an app that we have called Screenr. So Screenr is a program for collectively selecting a program that you'd all like to watch, and then collaboratively viewing and critiquing that program. So it uses social tagging. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a sec, but that's the kind of idea, is that you watch the program and use your second screen and do a social tagging process as part of your critical viewing. And it works across a weekly cycle with 2 phases. So a voting phase to enable everybody to browse and pick what they would like to watch collectively, and then the actual live viewing phase. So during the voting phase, we have designed a TV guide that everybody who's using Screenr can use. And what's shown is basically snippets from actual TV listings. So users can browse through, see importantly the content of the program and what it's about, and also the scheduling information, so actually when it is, because that's one consideration when people are collectively viewing. You have to be actually in the house. And importantly, we made all the voting that people can do open. So if you find a program that you'd like to watch, you can see on the screen on the left at the bottom, I've cast my vote, but it's also telling me that P12 has voted for this. So we wanted to make sure that the voting was transparent to enable the kind of collective voting process to work. And to further kind of support that, we made a dashboard, which is on the right, which shows basically just what everybody's been up to. So who's voting for what and what you need to do. So you might need to go and cast your vote, or you need to be in at 5 p.m. to watch this program. So once the first phase is over, then at 8 p.m. when the program is on, we'll go to the live viewing phase. So there are 3 kind of screens that users can interact with. We have a live chat of all of the users, a fairly standard instant messaging kind of chat. Then the main interface that people use whilst live viewing is the screen in the middle, and they use this for tagging and spotting. So tags are kind of short, pithy sentences which encapsulate a pattern or a production technique that the viewer has noticed in the program. And the colours are important. So green are tags that you've created yourself, and purple are tags that somebody else has created. So that's tagging, but you can also do spotting. And the difference with spotting is that you are looking at the program and you're trying to look for an occurrence or to spot it, like a spotting guide. I've just seen acting for the camera, or I've just seen staged conversations. So they would just tap on that to note that they've seen that. And the third screen is a little overlay that people can get to. And what this shows is a live feed of every tag that all the other users are creating. And the idea there is that if you see one that resonates with you, so it resonates with your experience of viewing, you think, oh yes, I've seen some politics, or I just saw laughing, they would just tap on it and it would go to their central, the screen in the middle, the tagging screen. So we wanted to evaluate Screenr to see how the critical co-viewing process would actually work. And to do that, we wanted to do an in-the-wild trial. So we used real TV schedules, and the programs were all broadcast at the normative prime time when everybody's watching TV. We had 12 participants. They didn't know each other, and they used the technology on their own devices, in their own homes, so they were all watching completely separately. And there was no intervention over the course of 4 weeks by us, so we just left them to it. We assigned them all pseudonyms that could be used throughout the study, and they were casting votes on the real TV schedule. So they were having to make a decision about whether they'd like to actually watch the program itself, and also whether it would fit with their schedule. So we inducted them all with an entrance interview. We just checked up to make sure nothing had gone wrong with a telephone interview halfway through. And then we conducted 3 focus groups at the end where we kind of explored collectively how they got on with using it. So we collected a few kind of bits of usage data. We've got quite a bit more in the paper, but I just wanted to pick on this because this is quite interesting and indicative of the ways that people used it. So we found particularly, it came out in the usage data and in talking to the participants, that they gravitated to different bits of Screenr. So we have, for example, in the top right, people are focusing on the critique process, and they're doing that by making tags and using other people's tags. So it's a really kind of social way of engaging. And then in contrast, on the left, we have 3 users who are primarily codifying what's going on in the TV. So they're making tags, but they're also looking for those tags and spotting the occurrences of them. And of course, as usual, we have one user down the bottom who just talks to everybody all the time. So that's fine as well. So we have a huge amount of qualitative data, and I just wanted to pick out a few nice kind of little nuggets of data and quotes. So we had this one quote from this participant. I tended to look at the other tags. Oh, that was a good way of putting it. Why didn't I put it like that? My likes of other people's tags would have been in the ad breaks. So we saw this quite a lot in the data, that participants were basically going through a process of social affirmation and influence because they're comparing their views against each other. So as this participant here, looking at the tags and seeing, how does their view compare to my view? And possibly changing or amending their view depending on that reflective process. And also importantly here, they're saying about using the ad breaks. So it's something we didn't design for purposefully, but of course the live TV viewing ecosystem, of course, has ad breaks in it. So we found users were leveraging that by taking a moment to not focus on the program because it's on, no one likes watching adverts, and then looking at their phone and kind of reflecting back on what's been said by everybody in Screenr. And we also saw the critiquing process playing out kind of socially across kind of tags and chat discussions. So we have here a tag created at the top, the one in blue. So this is someone's pithy tag that they've made. Assume it's a legal image, which is cut off because we had a character limit because they're supposed to be pithy. But anyway, they still like that one. So the way Screenr works is that anybody could just take that tag and use it in their own tagging and spotting interface and just quietly kind of agree and use it. But we found that some users were purposefully, even though it's still anonymous and nobody really knows who's made the tags, they were openly saying, oh yeah, well, whoever made that, I agree with you. You know, they're saying, I agree with whoever tagged that we automatically assume it's illegal immigrants. And they were also trying to they were using the chat discussion and the tags in different ways, of course, because the tags are very short. And then in the chat, people were often like this, referring to a tag and trying to contextualize it and say, well, I made this one, and what I meant was this. So we also had quite a lot of data around the actual TV viewing ecosystem. So this person says, I was asking my husband and I was commenting on the comments that were on Screenr and saying, oh, they're all saying this or somebody's saying that. What do you think of that? So I was involving him in the conversation. And what we see here is that even though we've made a smartphone app which has connected people together, is that, of course, that's the digital co-viewing experience. But, of course, we know we often watch TV together, and here we can see that the critique that's going on in the remote kind of sphere as part of Screenr is being fed back into the living room experience, being discussed. People are kind of reaching collective opinions or maybe changing their mind, and then that's being fed back in. So we can see that we have these two kind of spheres of the local co-viewing experience and the remote co-viewing experience. So sort of what can we learn then about fostering critical co-reflection on reality TV? Well, we have quite a lot more in the paper, but I'll just pick on two. One, building group criticality by bringing everybody together in the same space seemed to be really, really useful, because people were able to talk about things in their own terms. They had no guidance from external experts. So unlike, for example, on platforms like Twitter, where a lot of kind of co-viewing discussion takes place, they didn't have anybody who could interject in and say, oh no, you're talking about these things wrong, you should talk about them in this way. So because they were together over the course of 4 weeks, they kind of were able to test the limits and the boundaries of, possibly saying things that might be unacceptable in a really public context, but saying it and then having a discussion about maybe why they're right, maybe why they're wrong, and kind of engaging in the critical process together. And of course, on Twitter, when you're putting things out there publicly, you can often get really fearsome responses, or debate can arise. So people were kind of felt a little more able to share in the Screenr space. And of course, live viewing presents a really nice opportunity for group criticality. So live viewing still is the predominant mode of TV viewing in the UK. So despite the rise of platforms like Netflix, we still see in the UK, I can't remember the stat from the paper, I think it's like 60%, 70% of all viewing is live. And if we think outside the UK context, you can think of many examples of programs, the Super Bowl or the presidential inaugurations, that kind of thing, where you have huge live viewing audiences. And at a technological point, leveraging that and putting liveness within the app, so tags were live, chatting was live, really allowed people to engage with the kind of live experience. And also things like ad breaks, they could sit back and kind of digest and reflect on the whole process. So I'm pretty much out of time, so I will just say thanks, and please go and read the paper. Or questions?
Thanks for Tom. We have 2 minutes to have questions. Anyone have questions?
Hi there, my name is Larwin. I'm from Rochester Institute, and I really enjoyed your presentation, so thank you for that. I'm curious to know, is there a limit on how many people are in that group? Because it seems that if there are around 100, 200 people in a conversation, it could get out of control. So is that something you've put a limit on, as numbers of participants?
Yeah, that's right. So we're very mindful of that, and as I say, for the purposes of this study, it was quite a small group, but we're definitely aware of kind of future work is that there are opportunities for things like machine learning to be able to group people together. So we found that at scale, we're not sure big groups would work. So yeah, you're right, there is a limit. But we think, for example, in the context of viewing, and because it's schedule based, there's lots of people who are often watching at the same time, so there's definitely opportunities there to group people together in small kind of critical collectives that could watch the same programs together, and kind of do their reflection in little groups.
Great, thank you.
We have 1 minute for a question. Anyone would like to ask questions? Okay, I have a question for Tom. When you select the participant, did you select them based on their interest, or they are sharing the same generations or age, or just randomly?
Yeah, so we were quite mindful of the demographic of the people because, of course, we were wanting to kind of, basically not just have a lot of students using our app, because we're talking about people's political views and their views on social issues. So we used a recruitment company who was able to find us a really diverse range of participants. So we had, if you go down the list of professions, policeman, doctor, firefighter, that kind of thing. So we had a really broad range of views and definitely people on sort of all sides of the political spectrum. So, there's some stuff in the paper about how we saw lots of kind of definitely differing views and a kind of negotiation process of people kind of coming together. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, and thanks for Tom.